Alright guys, so for this video, you're just going to need a protractor, not a protractor, sorry, a ruler, and some colored pencils. 3 different colors would be best. Alright, the first thing I want you to do is write down these steps. These steps are the steps to show how our eye creates a virtual image. Alright, so the virtual space only exists in our mind, and this video is going to show you how our mind creates images that appear to be behind the mirror. Alright, so pause the video now and write down these steps. Okay, so hopefully you restarted it and you have all those steps written down. Alright, now what I want you to do is, in your notebook, give yourself plenty of room to make it just as big as I have here. I have a 10 centimeter tall stick figure object on the real side of a mirror. That's where the object's always on the real side. And we're going to show how our eye creates a image of that if he looks in the mirror. Alright, and this is the mirror right here. This will just be the ground. Okay. So I have some space to record some distances for our first step. Now let's get started with step 1 is measure the height from the foot to the eye in centimeters, okay? So we're going to show how this person sees their foot in the mirror. So the foot to the eye is not the same as HO, because the eye is a little below the top of his head. So take your ruler, and you should get a number that's similar to mine, but you're going to use your own numbers in this video. I'm going to measure from his eye down to his foot, and I get about 9.5 centimeters. I'm going to write that down below. Alright, so step 2 is we want to half this length. Alright, so if we divide that by 2, you might have a different number like 9.4, that's fine. Don't use my number just because it's mine. If I half that length, you can do it in your calculator. I'll do it in my head. I get 4.75 centimeters. All right, so that's step 2. Now step 3, mark half the distance from the foot to the eye on the mirror with a small dash. Okay, I'm just going to take my regular pencil, and up from the foot I'm going to measure that 4.75 centimeters, but I'm going to do it on the mirror. Okay, so it's about 4.75 right there. I'm going to mark it with a small dash. So that is halfway from the foot to the eye right there. Then I'm going to reflect light off this location, going from the foot to the eye. Alright, so I'll start with the color green for the foot. Alright, and I'm going to use my straight edge. Reflect light from the foot off that spot that you marked halfway into the eye. Alright, so we have and use some arrows to show which way it's going. So we have our incident ray right down here and your reflected ray. Just remember which one is which. Okay, and then step 5 is trace the reflected ray back behind the mirror using a dotted line until it reaches the height of the foot. Alright, so trace the reflected ray, that's this one, that's going into the eye. Trace that back behind the mirror until it's the same height as the foot. There you go. Alright, now I traced that with a dotted line because that ray of light on the virtual side of the mirror, it's not real. So it's on the virtual side, the light always gets dotted lines because it doesn't actually exist. The thing is, our mind thinks the light came from behind the mirror because our mind thinks that light goes in a straight line. So this reflected ray, our mind thinks it came from back here. And then, because it thinks it came from back there, we could do step 6, draw a foot on the virtual side of the mirror. Alright, so yeah, we could do that with pen, because I drew his image with his object with pen. And yeah, I'll start kind of drawing a foot right there and start creating his image there. Okay, so now we're going to repeat this process, but we're going to do it for his waist. Okay, we're going to do distance from the waist to eye. Step one, remember, is measure the height from foot to the eye in centimeters. Okay, going too fast, just please pause it, and you know, that's okay. You could always pause it if you need to. I'll switch colors for the waist. We're going from the waist to the eye. Okay, so we'll measure that in centimeters. Now your number is going to be different. Don't just use my number. Use whatever number you get for your diagram. If you use my numbers, your diagram is going to come out wrong. Okay, 5.2 is what I got. So I'll write that. 5.2 centimeters from the waist to the eye. Step two is to half this length. So I get 2.6 centimeters. You could half your own length, whatever it was. Step three, remember, mark half the distance from the, well, we're not going to do the foot now. We're going to do half the distance from the waist to the eye on the mirror with a small dash. Okay, so we want to measure 2.6 centimeters up from the waist to the eye. So I'm just going to go over here. This is about waist level. I'm going to measure 2.6 centimeters up from that. And boop, there you go. That's half the distance from the waist to the eye. Make sure that's exactly halfway using your ruler. Okay, now the next step, step four, is reflect light off this location going from, instead of the foot to the eye, the light goes from the waist to the eye now. All right, so we're gonna get our straight edge out and reflect light off that location on the mirror. Show it going towards the mirror with an arrow, and then I'm going to tilt my paper for myself, and then reflect it into the eye with another arrow. All right. Now that's what actually happens to the light. Step five, trace the reflected ray back behind the mirror using a dotted line until it reaches the height of the foot. Oh, well, not the foot. We're going to do the waist this time, you know? Back behind the mirror using a dotted line. So this is the incident ray, this is the reflected ray. We're going to trace the reflected ray always back behind the mirror until it reaches the height of the waist, which is where that light came from. Alright, keep going, keep going. Yep, I think that's about waist height right there. That's pretty good. So now we could draw that person's waist, or that person's image's waist right there, alright? Now that dotted line, remember, that doesn't really exist, but our mind thinks it does, okay? Our mind traces the reflected ray back behind the mirror to that location. Okay, so last, we're going to do one more object. We're going to show how light goes from the hand to the eye. All right, so step one, measure the height from the hand now to the eye in centimeters instead of the foot. So here's the hand, we'll say it's right there, and we'll measure the distance from the hand up to the eye. Use your own distance, not mine. I get about 2.5 centimeters. You make your own measurement though. If you use my measurement, you're gonna mess something up. Step two, we're gonna half that distance. Okay, and when I half 2.5, I get 1.25. That's step two, half that length. Number three, mark half the distance from the, this time not the foot to the eye, from the hand to the eye on the mirror with a small dash. So we'll go 1.25 up from the hand. Okay, there's the hand right there, that's the height of the hand. And we'll go up 1.25 from that. Right there. And that's where the light is going to reflect off of the mirror, coming from the hand to the eye. Boom, right there. And it will go into the eye, right? So draw the arrow heading towards the mirror for the incident ray and away from the mirror towards the eye for the reflected ray. The last, as we close out the hand here, we're going to trace the reflected ray again. We're going to trace that behind the mirror. So line up your straight edge with the reflected ray till we get to hand height, which is about here. So we're going to trace it back to there. There we go. And that is where the hand should be. right there. And then we could just draw their face. Doot, doot. There we go, and finish the object. Okay, so remember, the reflected ray is always the ray that gets traced back to the mirror, behind the mirror, because it's the ray our eye sees. And the ray that's traced back here is, you know, it isn't actually light, but it's what our eye thinks is happening. So the only reason mirrors work is because our eye is actually getting it wrong, and it thinks light is coming from behind the mirror. And that's what we just showed by tracing the reflected rays back there. All right.